So good evening, everyone. We're still reading in Saint Catherine of Siena, and the poem is This Place of Abundance. Heidi, would you like to read that poem for us, please?
Surely, I'm looking for it.
Page 1 183?
193.
193, thank you.
Got it. This place of abundance. We know nothing until we know everything. I have no object to defend, for all is of equal value to me. I cannot lose anything in this place of abundance I found. If something my heart cherishes is taken away, I just say, Lord, what happened? And 100 more appear. This place of abundance. We know nothing until we know everything. I have no object to defend, for all is of equal value to me. I cannot lose anything in this place of abundance I found. If something my heart cherishes is taken away, I just say, Lord, what happened? And 100 more appear.
What do you suppose is meant by the statement, we know nothing until we know everything? Anyone at all care to respond?
I think that it's until we know everything, we're just guessing at all the things we think we know, because everything that we don't know will affect our knowledge of the things we think we know. Sorry, that was too much.
No, that's fine. That was fine.
I don't know if that made sense.
Sri Ramakrishna was encouraged by his brother to get an education so he could get more money for the family, so that he could earn more money for the family. And Sri Ramakrishna said, I don't want a breadwinning education. I want to know that by which all else is known. And I think this is what she's pointing to. Anyone else have anything to say? I mean, what a remarkable opening line.
I have a comment, Brother Shankara. I resonate with until I know about myself, I don't understand everything else. So maybe in that line of thinking, I was thinking, until we find out about ourselves, it's difficult to know and understand everything else. That's what I resonate with. Thank you.
Perfectly legitimate reading. Anyone else have anything to say?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swayam.
I think I sort of felt along the lines that you were talking about Sri Ramakrishna's teaching, Brahman, as we say, or the highest truth, is the infinite. And until we know that which is knowledge itself, we cannot know anything. That existence, consciousness, or knowledge is the everything. Otherwise, we only know pieces. We can never know anything.
And the pieces, as Sharda pointed out, don't necessarily fit together, even though it may seem to us that they do. There is, as I often say, there's no right reading. But what it seems to me that she's saying is we know really nothing for sure until we become omniscient. And this is the remarkable thing about the illumined soul, is they become omniscient. They literally know any and everything they wish to know. So she follows that by saying, I have no object to defend, for all is of equal value to me. In other words, everything, the everything that she knows, is of equal value. Nothing is more or less valuable. I can't lose anything in this place of abundance I found. If something my heart cherishes is taken away, I just say, Lord, what happened? And 100 more appear. And of course, I think she's just using the word 100 to represent manyness. Omniscience is not something of the mind. Omniscience is something of the spirit. So the mind knows nothing for sure, as Sharda pointed out. We're guessing. We're estimating. We're basing things on past experience. Anyone else have anything to say about it?
So when I contemplate, I realize that I know nothing based on how many times my mind changes its perspective about the same thing.
Yes. Ah, how well said, Swam. How many times my mind changes its perspective about the same thing. Yes. How, how accurate that is. Which is why many of the poets in this book say, don't say you know the truth about anything, but most particularly don't say you know the truth about God. Because how can you know the truth about the infinite? You may see this, you may see that, you may see the other thing. Anybody else got a word to say? This is good. Okay. Now, here's one, I think, Haima, that's right up your alley. Would you read If Someone Cried in Heaven?
Are you asking me, Brother Shankar?
Yes, please.
Oh, sure, sure. if someone cried in heaven, if you cried in heaven, everyone would laugh, or they would know you were just kidding. If someone cried in heaven, if you cried in heaven, everyone would laugh, or they would know you were just kidding. That's so funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
It is.
It is just,
Just kidding. I wonder what she means, Brother Shankara. I cannot make any deep meaning from this. I was wondering.
well, the reason I said it's just up your alley is that when you often talk about meditation and the results of meditation, this gets us to that place that is heavenly,
Yes.
and there's no weeping there.
Yes.
There's no weeping there.
I see.
We may, if our heart touches on someone else's suffering, we may be compassionate. We may even weep. But that's not what she's talking about.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
I'm reading that the heaven in this line as the bliss part of the existence, consciousness bliss.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's that's what we reach through deep meditation, is that state of bliss, which is beyond what we ordinarily mean by bliss. But one can't imagine crying in that state, crying for themselves anyway. Anything else about this little poem? Anybody else? Bart, have you got the book open? Would you like to read the next one?
I do, Brother Shankar, yes. Rest in prayer. The sun hears the fields talking about effort, and the sun smiles and whispers to me, why don't the fields just rest? For I am willing to do everything to help them grow. Rest, my dears, in prayer. Rest in prayer. The sun hears the fields talking about effort, and the sun smiles and whispers to me, why don't the fields just rest? For I am willing to do everything to help them grow. Rest, my dears, in prayer. And that really speaks to me about being a witness to a miracle rather than the doer of the miracle. And I'm putting all this effort into doing the field's work and the sun's work in everyday life. And I need to rest and let the sun's light come to me and not block it with all this distraction of effort and worry and day-to-day struggles. Like the fields growing.
Well, this certainly does represent Jesus's promise that, about, he speaks of the birds of the air, the lilies of the field.
Yeah. They don't toil or spin.
You are so much greater than these, he says.
Yeah.
Why do you worry? Why do you strive? Anyone else have anything to say about this poem? So it's really one of those great reassuring messages from an illumined soul. Rest in prayer, dears.
It is reassuring indeed. And I love hearing that reassurance over and over because when I try to attempt resting in prayer, and if I can reach there even for a moment, it is so peaceful.
Yes, exactly, dear. And this is why it's said over and over, if we reach there even for a moment, it's transformative. Because we understand then that is there. Even if, as Bart said, because of the way the world is and we are in the world, we get distracted. I mean, it's always good to recall these promises of these great ones. I mentioned Christ's talking about the birds of the air, the lilies of the field. You are so much greater than these. Why do you worry? Why do you strive when the divine is willing to do everything for you? You just have to accept what the divine offers. And if you do, you find yourself in that place of abundance that she spoke of in a couple of poems back. Anything else from anyone? Of course, the sun here is almost a pun rather than S-U-N, capital S-O-N. I think it is a pun, really.
So do you think, okay, so the fields are talking to the sun, right? About the effort that it's taking, to grow the crop, for instance.
Yes.
And the sun smiles and whispers to me. Is me God, do you think?
No,
Or
whispers to me, St. Catherine, I think.
Oh, okay.
The sun
Whispers to
to
her.
me,
I
to
got you.
her.
Okay.
And the sun says, essentially a translation of what Jesus said. Why don't the fields just rest, for I'm willing to do everything for them. Everything to help them grow.
Right. It's a lovely poem.
It is. And particularly for those of us who grew up in the Christian tradition, it just is an echo of Christ's saying, my burden is light, my yoke is easy. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. Come to me, all of you who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Rest, my dears, in prayer. What is prayer? Somebody tell me, what do you think prayer is?
Talking to God.
Say it again, please.
Talking to God.
Yes, directing your attention to the divine. Rest, dears, direct your attention to me.
It's my lifeline.
Thank you, June. Please expand on that. What do you mean by lifeline?
I guess I depend on God um, to be there for me. And for anyone that will seek him.
Pardon me for putting words in your mouth, but is it your experience that when you turn your attention toward God, you always find him there?
Not always,
Ah,
because something is distracting me sometimes.
yes, exactly. And sometimes it's this idea that I have to do it for myself. This idea that I am the doer.
Yes, but
The sun hears the fields talking about effort, and the sun smiles and whispers to me. They don't have to think of themselves as the doers. They don't have to do the doing. Why don't the fields just rest? For I am willing to do everything to help them grow. But you just said exactly the magic words, June. Distracting. We get distracted from that. And I don't mean just you. You know, we all do. At least I'm assuming that we all do.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I feel prayer is a permission for me to pour my heart out, and there's no pushback. God doesn't say, don't complain, don't whine, don't say this. He just listens, he or she. So I can pretty much pour my heart out
Precisely.
and ask for guidance.
Yes. And that is the wisest thing that we can do. When we feel distressed, when we feel like we need guidance, that kind of prayer is exactly what we should do.
This is Bart, I wanted to share something that she's coming from a Roman Catholic tradition, and I was in a monastic tradition for a lot of years. There's the idea of being, as a monk or a nun, being a field worker in the mission field. And if you go back to the moment you took your first breath, or your heartbeat first started, and has continued until this very instant, 24/7. There have been thousands of masses being offered and the liturgy of the hours being chanted every minute. If you've been breathing and had a pulse, the church, the field workers were working in that direction to bring spirituality and healing. And that would be what a monk or a nun would say about this. And of course, that's just on the Christian monastic tradition, we have the Hindu traditions also. And it's just interesting to think of that. If you're alive and awake, there are thousands of field workers praying and doing this work, or letting the sun do the work. So
Very nice, Bart. Thank you. Sharda, do you have the book open? Would you like to read the next poem, The Foundation of God?
Hope if I unmute. The Foundation of God. My perfect Lord sang, less likely is God to condemn my hand's action than condemn any soul. How could that be possible, my heart thought? And the Christ, knowing all minds, replied, forgiveness is the foundation of God's being. The foundation of God. My perfect Lord sang, less likely is God to condemn my hand's action than condemn any soul. How could that be possible, my heart thought? And the Christ, knowing all minds, replied, forgiveness is the foundation of God's being.
Which so relates to what Swayam said just a little while ago. When we do turn our attention to the divine, there is no pushback. There is no voice saying, why are you complaining? What is this all about? That's some small voice within a human being that says that. My perfect Lord, by that I assume she means Jesus. Less likely is God to condemn my hand's action than to condemn any soul. And then Catherine says, how could that be possible, my heart thought? And the Christ, knowing all minds, replied, forgiveness is the foundation of God's being.
I find the grammar a little confusing in the quote of what my perfect Lord sang, because I would think it seems like she's trying to say, more likely is God to condemn my hand's action than condemn any soul.
No,
No,
she's saying God is not, he's not likely to condemn my action or any soul. He's less likely to condemn my hand's action than he is to condemn any soul.
well, if he's less likely to condemn my hand's action, that means he's slightly, at least slightly more likely to condemn any soul.
I see.
No, I mean,
I think you're right.
yeah, I mean,
Well, we'll have to write to Mr.
I
Ladinsky.
will. He was,
You're such a good grammarian.
well, I'm part of the English Club Majors Club Society or whatever they call us.
Yeah.
But let's assume he means,
Right.
because I think he means God isn't any more likely to condemn any soul than to condemn my hand's action.
Right.
I think that's what it's supposed to be saying.
I think you're right.
How could that be possible? Christ, knowing all minds, replied, forgiveness is the foundation.
There's our left brain dissecting that grammar, Cindy.
Yeah, well.
Yes, it is.
Hmm.
Anyone else have anything about this one?
I think truly forgiveness is the foundation of God's being. That's very profound, Brother Shankara. Truly, forgiveness is the basis for a harmonious life. For
Yes.
in this,
If it weren't so,
yes,
how could life go on?
exactly.
There'd be thunder and lightning and devastation every moment.
It is truly fun, the foundation of God's being. Very nice. Thank you.
And one of the things that it points to is that if we're going to reflect, as we heard in that poem, The Perfect Mirror by Hafiz, if we're going to reflect the divine's being perfectly, then we're going to forgive ourselves first,
Yes.
and then everyone else, without exception. If
Truly.
we become the perfect mirror, if we become that mirror, then forgiveness becomes the foundation of our being as well.
Thank you.
So that was a way of saying I like what you were saying. You know me, I elaborate. Oh, here's such a wonderful, great poem. Katrina, do you have the book open?
No, sir, I don't have the book.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, Liam, have you got the book open? Would you like to read this poem, To Even Dress?
Yes. Just want to make sure I have the whole poem. Okay. To even dress. A great helplessness I felt at times to even dress myself some days. So I prayed with all my heart, dear God, help me. It is not possible for love to not hear us. And whatever happens, the perfect teacher staged. What would a wise, powerful king allow a beloved child to see? To even dress. A great helplessness I felt at times to even dress myself some days. So I prayed with all my heart, dear God, help me. It is not possible for love to not hear us. And whatever happens, the perfect teacher staged. What would a wise, powerful king allow a beloved child to see?
Anyone feel like answering that question? What would a wise, powerful king allow a beloved child to see?
I think he would allow, a wise, powerful king would allow a child to see see opposites, see everything, not just see the easy things or the good things, but to see the suffering and the joy.
Very good. Anyone else have any interpretation of this? What would a wise, powerful king allow a beloved child to see?
What came to mind for me, based on how the poem begins, in terms of the great helplessness that at times makes it even hard to address, is like this sense of there's like a sense of despair. And there have been times where I've felt despair to the point where I felt like I couldn't handle it, yet I was able to. And so then, to answer the question, a wise, powerful king would allow a beloved child to see only what the child is able to handle. So even though sometimes despair may seem overwhelming and too much, it's always enough for us to handle.
Very nicely said, Liam. Very nicely said. The wise, powerful king would allow the child to see what would get them through that moment, those moments.
I think the key is the wise, powerful king. When I think of Buddha's story, his father was powerful, but he was probably not wise, so he didn't allow the Buddha to see everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then we got Buddha out of that.
And out of what? He contrived to escape the velvet prison that his father had contrived for him. He said, let's go outside and see what's there outside this compound that I've been confined to. And so what he saw was ignorance, suffering, and death. And as you said, what did we get out of that? We got the Buddha. And out of what Catherine of Siena saw, we got Saint Catherine of Siena, a doctor of the church. Which, as Bart could explain to us in detail if he cared to, that doctor of the church, just what that means. It's a very, very great honor within the Roman Catholic tradition to be given that encomium.
I think the first one was St. Augustine, and then St. Catherine again is writing in the 1300s, and it took until 1970 for the patriarchy to give her the recognition that she deserved as a mystic. We have 30 there. I looked it up. There are 36 doctors of the church. Only 4 are women.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, well,
I won't get into the patriarchy and the sexism and the. But there's just a whole side of spirituality of the divine feminine that haven't been. We've been starved.
Well,
from that.
of course, until John Paul II was shown to be a Marianist, it was a heresy to have the divine feminine at the center of your spiritual concentration, your spiritual intentionality. The way this poem begins is so if every one of us who is honest with ourselves, we know exactly what she means, however it might manifest for us. A great helplessness I felt at times to even dress myself some days. Just don't want to even get out of bed. And the way she develops it. So I prayed with all my heart, dear God, please help me. It is not possible for love to not hear us. And whatever happens, the perfect teacher staged. So as you say, Liam, something gets us through those moments. And she's saying, it's the perfect teacher that gives us whatever it is we need to see to get us through. Anybody else got anything to say about this poignant poem?
I can say that I relate to it.
Yeah, me too.
Probably most of us do or can. It's almost like a little synopsis of a low point in my life
Mm-hmm.
where I did call out to God. And at that time, I wasn't particularly in a spiritual space,
Mm-hmm.
but I did. And I think that's what the perfect teacher had staged. You know, things had to get that bad
Right.
for me to say, please, God, help me. And God did.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. Yeah, it was very amazing. Is.
Often after times of despair are the greatest times of learning about God. Because we're seeking, ravenously seeking.
I love that word you used, June, ravenous. Yes.
But sometimes it takes a great despair to bring that on.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, of course, there's a really great book written. The title is The Dark Night of the Soul. And it's about that particular aspect of being a human being, and in this case also a human being who is a Roman Catholic monastic. Who that hasn't read? Swayam, would you like to read the poem, The Hymns of the Earth?
Sure, but before that, I have a question or a
Yes,
sort
dear.
of a comment. Whatever happens, the perfect teacher staged. So, as a culmination of the different acts and scenes, we do get that insight um, that the perfect teacher staged it and the lesson is learned. But act by act, scene by scene, sometimes the questions still come. Why? Um, what lesson was there in that particular? Uh, I don't know if it's worth, probably not worth spending the time dissecting that much. But overall, I think um, what the perfect teacher stages is um, getting us to a stage that we need to be.
No question. But as June pointed out very early in this evening's gathering, we get distracted. We get distracted. And it isn't like we're being bad. We just haven't yet overcome our tendency to get distracted. And this is such a powerful tendency in us that the great teacher Shankaracharya says that this persists right up until you just lose the body at all. As long as we're embodied, there is the potential to be distracted. And the great teacher Vashishta, who was the teacher of Lord Rama, his sons, all of his sons died. And he was disconsolate and weeping. And Rama's brother Lakshmana said, Rama, this is the great teacher who taught you. This is the illumined soul. This is the wise one. What's he doing weeping about the fact that his sons were lost? And Rama says, with forgiveness and compassion, oh, my dear brother, you must understand, he who has wisdom also has ignorance. It's a condition of our being embodied. So, as you say, Swayam, act by act, scene by scene, there's always the chance of becoming, of our attention being drawn away from the great promise that was made in that poem about the sun and the fields. And why are they struggling? I'll do everything. But we forget.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. So, the hymns of the earth. I wanted to be a hermit and only hear the hymns of the earth and the laughter of the sky and the sweet gossip of the creatures on my limbs, the forests. I wanted to be a hermit and not see another face look upon mine and tell me I was not all the beauty in this world. For so many faces do that, cage us. The wings we have are so fragile, they can break from just one word or a glance void of love. I wanted to live in that cluster of light's silence, because is it not true the heart is so fragile and shy? The hymns of the earth. I wanted to be a hermit and only hear the hymns of the earth and the laughter of the sky and the sweet gossip of the creatures on my limbs, the forests. I wanted to be a hermit and not see another face look upon mine and tell me I was not all the beauty in this world. For so many faces do that, cage us. The wings we have are so fragile, they can break from just one word or a glance void of love. I wanted to live in that cloister of light's silence, because is it not true? The heart is so fragile and shy. Yes, sometimes the monastic life is tempting, but I'm sure that um, it's has its challenges, and you know, like this wanting to run away somewhere, but we need to be in the field of action. I think Swami Vivekananda says that if you, I don't know the exact quote, but both have lost the way. Um, one who runs away, or the one who stays in the world but doesn't, gets too involved. Something like that.
Thank you, Soyam, for all of that, for the reading. Very nice reading. And what you said. Anyone else have anything to say about this remarkable poem? I think it's important for us to remember the quote with it starts this thing about Saint Catherine of Siena. She said, if I didn't understand the suffering of the human heart, I would not speak before its holiness. Words to that effect. That isn't exactly what it says, but if anybody can flip back to what that.
Sure. You got it almost exactly right. If I did not understand the glory and suffering of the human heart, okay? You just left out the glory, but that, yeah, you had it really close.
Well, that's an important word that I left out. If I did not understand the glory and the suffering of the human heart, I would not speak before its holiness. And it's interesting that she said, I wanted to be a hermit, and yet that's not how she lived. As a matter of fact, just exactly the opposite. She was very busy, very active, and challenged the church at a time when it needed challenging. And that's why she ended up being called a doctor of the church, because her challenge was. But here she speaks of that, the qualities of the human heart that are so, for us to be so aware of. The heart is fragile and shy. More than one of the poets has mentioned this. So this poem seems to me to be a call for us to be aware, not to be one of those faces that looks upon another and says, you're not all the beauty in this world, denies your divinity, in other words. That's all the beauty in this world is the divinity. For so many faces do that, don't they? Cage us. The wings we have are so fragile. They can break from just one word or a glance void of love. It seems to me that this poem is a call for us to be so careful with one another, so kind, and kind to ourselves, kind to that heart that is so gentle and so given to love. So it's 3 minutes to 9. Is there anybody else who would like to say anything about this remarkable, this wonderful poem?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I wanted to say that Monday night class is one of the places we come to get the surgery done for the fragile heart. Then it breaks from some.
Yes, this is a remarkable group of people that gathered on Monday nights. Look how many of us gather. As Hafiz said, there are not very many people who really want to hear poetry, or what was it, Rumi? I've forgotten. Not very many people who really want to hear the poets sing.
This is not your everyday poetry, though.
Oh, it sure is not. It's far from anything every day. You're right. This is the testimony of illumined souls.
And I just like to say that, like the first line, I mean, I can see, I want to be a hermit too. And sometimes, and only, how she describes, only hear the hymns of the earth. I mean, I read that and I hear the waves of the ocean crashing, the wind, the other day it was very windy and you look at the trees, the laughter of the sky, nature's God's paintbrush, up in the sky. And the sweet gossip of the creatures on my limbs, the forest. You can just hear the birds singing in the trees, and I don't know, the lizards and the squirrels and what have you.
Yeah.
She just paints such a beautiful picture,
Yes, she does. Yes. And that is the realm, that is the domain of the heart. You so nicely put that, Heidi. That is the domain of the heart. We yearn toward that.
And then to have, just that kind of taken away, with just one word or a glance void of love, just smack, just like that. You can have that.
Haven't we all experienced, and for that matter, haven't we all done it to another person?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
Yes, we have. And I think that's one of the great messages of this poem. Oh, be so careful of others. Be so sweetly careful of others. By the way, just a little cause of celebration. A friend with whom I had lunch today, she's been really struggling. She's 71 years old and has been having trouble getting a job. and she needed one. And today she got a job, and a job that she's very happy to do, one that will fulfill her heart's wish. So just a little shout out from all of us to this wonderful thing that happened. Anything else about anything that St. Catherine of Siena had to say? All right, until next week, I'm going to read you a little something that was written here. Take me a second to pull it up. Hold on. This was written on Sunday, and it goes like this. It's one of those Japanese form poems, tankas. Open the floodgates to creativity. You're one with creation. All not yet made manifest is potential within you. Open the floodgates to creativity. You're one with creation. All not yet made manifest is potential within you. So that's my closing prayer for us. Jai, 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 Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. Go forward in the loving embrace, the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being. Until we see one another again, Jai, 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 which means hail to that divine presence, the Sun, the daughter, the mother, the father. Let us celebrate them all and know that they are Emmanuel. They are at hand. Any final other thought from anyone?
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Well, thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Good night, June.
Good night.
Thank you
So
so
good
much,
to have heard
everyone.
from you this evening. Looking forward to seeing you in a few days.
I would
All right.
I would like to have a copy of those words that you just shared with us.
Well, I will most cheerfully get them to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good
night.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, Liam.
Good night. Thank you.